Good morning or afternoon as the case may be, and best wishes from Brisbane, Australia. My name is Martin Kirby and I'm Head of Information Services at St Joseph's Nudgee College. The purpose of my part of today's presentation is to outline the means by which my school seeks to commemorate its military heritage and to make a broad generalisation about the broader historical narratives to which such commemorative efforts belong. I'm aware that this is quite ambitious given the time constraints, so I will move quickly. First, some context. St Joseph's Nudgee College is situated in Brisbane, the capital of the Australian state of Queensland. It is a Catholic day and boarding school for 1,500 students between the ages of 10 and 18. The college was established in 1891, 10 years before Federation, the birth of Australia as an independent nation, although of course still very much one that deferred to Great Britain. Opened in 1891, the college was born out of the Christian Brothers' desire to open up the social and economic opportunities of the new land to the children of the Irish, while also cultivating a Catholic non-materialist spirit. The Irish, overrepresented in the lower working class, suffered at least as much as any other group in Queensland at the time the twin tyrannies of distance and economic distress. A boarding school run by the Christian Brothers in the state's capital seemed to offer an antidote to both. Though the college was, from its inception, shaped by the educational needs of a frontier society, there were greater issues with which it grappled. The Christian Brothers had been founded in Ireland with a membership devoted, as it would seem to an outsider, equally to the service of Christ and homeland. The brothers who served at the college in its first half-century were predominantly Irish-born, with a clientele that shared close familial links with Ireland. Most were aware of Ireland as a spiritual home, and if they weren't, the brothers were ever-present evangelists as well as examples of Irish culture along with Irish faith. In their preparedness to refer to England as an invader in college annuals, they sometimes became less an evangelical force than flaming agitators for Ireland's rights. Yet the college community was just as sorely quite conventional in its broader understanding of Australian interests. Though it is true they may not have been as fervent devotees of imperialism as their grammar school counterparts, they could be unashamedly jingoistic, content to adhere to a worldview that accepted the manifest destiny of British races to hold dominion over palm and pine. The students were, as O'Farrell observed of the wider Irish community in Australia, ambivalent, ambiguous people, thinking Irish, talking English, hating the tyranny, yet serving the tyrant. Nevertheless, the community was aware that they were Australian members of an empire in a manner different from the Irish in Ireland. The Christian Brothers themselves balanced this conflict by noting that their love of Ireland is second only to their love of Australia. It is not surprising, therefore, that the brothers inculcated in their students a strong commitment to the ideal of service in the national interest. In the course of its 120-year history, the college has evolved into one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the state, and one that is remarkably multicultural, though still paying some heed to its Irish heritage. At 4:29am on April 25, 1915, boats carrying the 9th Battalion AIF, Australian Imperial Force, reached a small inlet on the Turkish coast, which today is named ANZAC Cove in their honour. They were the leading element of a seaborne invasion born of the stalemate on the Western Front. The price for success would have been considerable: the capture of Constantinople, Turkey's capitulation, and a supply line to Russia. Though opposition was initially light, by early afternoon the invasion force was fighting for its life. Amongst the Queenslanders of the 9th Battalion were Brian Patterson, Hector DeCuti, Samuel Devitt and Reginald Berry, old boys of Nudgee College who, with 5 fellow alumni, fought through the first confused and terrifying hours of the campaign. Not one of the 9 would be present at the evacuation, for all would either be killed or wounded half within the first 2 days. In time, 26 old boys would serve on Gallipoli. Only 2 would be killed in this campaign. For the college, as for the nation as a whole, the loss would be most acute in later fighting in France and Belgium. Though the eventual evacuation of the beachhead in December after 8 months of intense fighting was a masterpiece of planning, their campaign, marred by errors from the outset, ended in the deaths of 50,000 Allied troops, almost 9,000 of them Australian. For the British, French and Indian participants, it was a none too difficult task to place the campaign into their respective historical narratives. But for the Australians and New Zealanders, who both became more broadly referred to as ANZACs, the Australian New Zealand Army Corps, It was a profoundly significant historical watershed, one which continues to reverberate in their respective contemporary political and social settings. The Australia that the college old boys left gives us some understanding of why this defeat laid the groundwork for a national day that dwarfs even Australia Day, let alone the anniversaries of other battles or campaigns, most of which were ultimately more successful and some fought in direct defence of Australian territory. In 1914, Australia had been a federal commonwealth for a mere 13 years, one that had achieved nationhood via a peaceful political process rather than by a national sacrifice akin to the American War of Independence. The repetition of phrases such as baptism of fire and first supreme test to describe Gallipoli does much to explain why it became a defining moment for the new nation and a watershed in the evolution of an enduring image of Australian masculinity. As late as 1994, it was possible to argue that the men and women who fought on Gallipoli and later in France and Belgium allowed the nation to come of age. It was widely believed that the ANZACs proved the character of Australian manhood for all the world to see, and through their victories and sacrifices establish a nation in spirit as well as in name. According to the legend, these qualities, fostered in the Australian bush, discovered and immortalised in war, typified Australians and Australian society, a frontier land of equal opportunity in which enterprising people made good. This process was so pervasive that Gallipoli remains central to the public commemorations in a manner so complete that the suffering of Fromelles and Pozières in 1916 and Bullecourt and Passchendaele in 1917, the great victory in front of Amiens in 1918, or the later advance through the Hindenburg Line are mere supporting players rather than the lead act. Even the successes in North Africa and the brutal campaigns against the Japanese during the Second World War have not displaced Gallipoli from its preeminent position, not just in a military history of Australia, but in the nation's narrative as a whole. From a population of fewer than 5 million in 1914, 416,000 enlisted, of whom 332,000 served overseas. This represented almost 40% of the total white male population between the ages of 18 and 44. 1/4 of the initial force of 30,000 that left Australia in 1914 survived to return home. Over 60,000 would be killed in total, mostly on the Western Front between 1916 and 1918. Yet despite our distance from the main theatres of war, the AIF remained an all-volunteer force, with conscription twice rejected in bitterly contested referenda. Of note also is that it was a force which did not, as was customary in the British Army, execute for cowardice. Though there continues to be what Robertson refers to as an extensive Gallipoli industry in the form of parades, memorials, pilgrimages, books, the popular press, plays, films and television documentaries, the most significant manifestation of this national experience has been the emergence of 25th April as a national day of commemoration for all of the conflicts in which Australia has fought. Over the ensuing years, it would in time become a public holiday, and despite the national participation in further conflicts, often as an American ally, and a loosening of the imperial bond, attendance at the marches, which are a central feature of community observance since the 20s, has actually increased. The question then remains, how does the college, which lost over 150 old boys to 20th century conflict, commemorate our pseudo-national day? The annual ANZAC Day ceremony conducted by the college is invariably a visually impressive ritual marked by little less than a religious solemnity. As one of the main organisers of the 2010 ceremony noted, it is an interesting blend of military ceremony, Catholic liturgy and local custom. It is conducted on the main oval, a place enshrined in college mythology as sacred, a status enforced rigorously and at times unofficially by senior students. The conduct of students is therefore not only influenced by the everyday expectations, but also palpably by the social expectations about personal behaviour in a sacred space. Conducted by a priest, there is an intentional blurring of the line between the secular values of good citizenship and the qualities of a good Catholic. It is not by accident that the statue of Edmund Rice, the founder of the Christian Brothers, is flanked by the Australian, Queensland and college flags, or that the honour board for the fallen is at the door of the chapel. The ceremony itself offers an almost apolitical representation about what is by its nature a contested and often divisive issue. In 10 years since 2000, not one of these commemorative rituals has mentioned Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan, let alone communism, a traditional foe of the Catholic Church, or fundamental Islam. Even the Bali terrorist bombings, which claimed the lives of almost 100 Australians, were commemorated in a manner not entirely dissimilar to the victims of a forest fire or flood. Yet despite the attempt to avoid overt politicisation, itself a political act, an attempt to commemorate war unavoidably creates a distinct political landscape. What is instead offered is an impressive, though generalised remembrance ceremony for Australian war dead, and a celebration of the lifestyle that this is permitted. From its earliest conception, the college aligned itself with the desire to improve the human condition, and as such, any commemorative effort must also seek to celebrate national sacrifice within a paradigm of an equally profound aim. This is entirely compatible with the evolution of ANZAC Day as a celebration of the spirit of ANZAC, with its human qualities of courage, mateship and sacrifice. All rituals depend on self-renewal among the players to validate the ritual scene, and this has permeated the celebration of a participation in an imperial venture to transcend the facts of the events commemorated and to reinvent itself as a celebration of all things Australian. The campaign was a failure, both its aims and execution subject to continuing criticism. The empires which fought it are gone, yet the celebration goes on.